You're listening to Within Tolerance, a podcast for machinists by a machinist. I'm your host, Dylan Jackson from Proteum Machining, and this week I am joined by Trevor Hirschi of Titan Ring Designs. Welcome, Trevor.
Thanks. Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. Thank you so much for taking the time to join the podcast. I've seen you on Instagram forever. Both your stuff. I saw your little collab with Discommon, which was super cool, and I'm really excited to have you on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks for inviting me because this is the first time I've done this kind of stuff. I like to talk to other people, and it's always like, there's this great community on Instagram, but like you don't get to meet these people unless like you run into them at conference or you're local or something. So yeah, this is awesome. Thanks.
Well, for those who don't follow you, where can they find you online? What do you do? What does Titan Ring Designs do? What do you do outside of that? All the good stuff.
So I'm most active on Instagram. Titan Ring Designs is the company that I started. I have a website, just www.titanringdesigns.com. I sell stuff on Etsy. For bigger stuff, I'll just make like a PayPal invoice if somebody wants to buy something. So I mean, like really any way somebody wants to pay me if they want to buy something, I'm okay with it. But yeah, mostly those venues. So
Okay. And then what kind of products are you known for? And what made you, I hate to say like Instagram famous, but I feel like I saw a bunch of your stuff forever popping up on, all the repost terrible Instagram pages and things like that.
So I do rings. I started with that a few years back. I just like designing things, and I ended up when I was getting married, there was like not great options, and it was like, what? I'm a machinist. Why don't I just like make something cool, something that's not just like, punch it out in 10 minutes on a lathe. So I've got into rings. I like just about. I mean, if you're in manufacturing, chances of liking more than like one niche is pretty common. I feel like everybody can make something else too. And so like I did some fidget spinners. I don't like to like rope myself into that category, but like it was a great thing and it was fun, and I enjoyed it. It made some good money. Um, I I I like to do custom design work if I can. If I have people that just say, "Hey, will you design me this thing?" or "Hey, we want to collaborate and have you make whatever," even if it's just we've already got the design, you want to make it, so kind of fall into the job shop type category, I guess.
Yeah, that door
But
handle you did recently was wicked. That thing was super cool.
yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was a big like a really big project where it was just here, take the reins and run with it, and guy just wanted an awesome door handle, and it was a lot of work. But I mean, I came up with the design, and from start to finish, it was the whole thing. It was me. So that was kind of cool. And then occasionally I'll get someone like Neil Ferrier from Discommon. He wanted some help with some stuff, and took advantage of the fact that I do this as a hobby. So like my free time is open to this kind of stuff, and yeah, that was a tight timing to do that project, but that was pretty fun. I didn't do any design work. It was just, hey, we want you to make it. I had a little bit of control over like trying to get the tool paths to look like what they wanted. But it was mostly just make the part, but that was a fun one too. So
Yeah. I remember you posting about like needing all of these things in like a very rushed timeline. It was like,
Oh
I need this
man.
giant block of titanium. I need these tools like really quickly.
Yeah.
I felt secondhand stress for you.
Yeah, thanks. It was one of those really rushed projects, but like at the same time, those, and Neil says it's like this, you get put under pressure and it helps you grow. And I really think that's true.
Yeah, you can't make a diamond without pressure.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a good one. But most of the time I don't have as big a time constraints. It's kind of like just up to me and my free time and do whatever. So
Definitely. Well, let's get into your backstory then. How did you get to the point where you're, making stuff like that at home and everything in between?
So I guess about me, I've always been interested in cars, and I grew up with my dad, being big into cars. He paints. He's a really good car painter. He did that professionally for a number of years, and now he just does it as a hobby. Um, but the automotive industry got me interested in, um, mechanics and stuff. And when I was in high school, I had a shop teacher, an auto shop teacher, that said, "Hey, you know what? You're a little bit more detail oriented. You should go up to the tech school and go take the machining course that they offer up there." And they offered that through our high school. It was like it was really short. It was like 2 hours, um, 2 hours of your day, and like an hour of it was bus time. So I had a really short shop experience, but I got in there. I loved the teachers. I thought it was really cool, and I think I broke like a dirt bike foot peg, and like I couldn't find one quick enough or something, and I just was like, you know what, I can make this, and so I just jumped on a mill, and like I spent some time designing one, and then jumped on a mill and cut it out, and I thought that was just like the coolest thing ever. So I kind of got hooked, and went through the machining program. um, got a certificate of completion in that, and I've worked in in machine shops manufacturing ever since. um, and that was 15 years or so, something like that. So I've just enjoyed making things, and it's been a lot of fun working in different shops. Some are just like job shops where it's whatever the part is, you just make it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I have this artistic background, and so it was always like, wow, this is a super cool part. What is it? I don't know. It's just the part we're making today. And it's like, how do you not know? Like, this is awesome. Well, I think it goes to like an F-35, a fighter jet. And it's like, "Ah, what? How are you not like nerding out about that? Like, this is super cool, right?" And so like, it was cool. I don't know if I can, say what parts I've made. Probably shouldn't, but I've made parts for NASA, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, um, all the big automotive manufacturing companies that do. There's a facility that is local here that makes airbags, and so made a lot of parts for them, and in turn they make parts for all the big car manufacturers around the world. I've made medical parts, I've made dental parts, I've made optical parts, aerospace, just about anything. That's kind of what the machining industry is all about. Um, but I've always had this like uh, this sense of like wanting to make something cool for like cool sake, not just, well, that was neat, and now I'll never see it because it's going in an airplane or something like that. But
Right.
almost like Chris Bathgate, where it's art for art's sake. And I've talked to him about that, and I think that's super cool. And I would love to um, have more time to devote to doing things like that. Um, but there's only so much time in the day, and family's important, and I've got to do things with my kids and see my wife, and um, all that kind of stuff. So I eventually got into teaching where I went to school, which was uh, really lucky. I think a big blessing in my life, because I was kind of like in between jobs, and it kind of like fell open to me just magically. My old teacher called me up, and he was like, "Hey, I know you're probably off making millions, making rings or something, but like if you're interested, we just had an opening. Your old teacher is retiring, and so we need another teacher, and you should put in a resume." And I was like, you know what? This is great timing. Yeah, I'm interested. I think that would be pretty cool because I get to help people learn about machining, and kind of share my passion with other people. So yeah, I've been doing that for about 5 years now, and it's pretty great. I like it. It's fun. There are things about it that are not great sometimes. Like there are some students that are just difficult to work with, or other people. But that's like any other job, right?
Especially
Um,
teaching. My wife's a third
yeah,
grade teacher, and I feel for her very
yeah.
often.
It can be challenging, but for the most part, I mean, like, I don't have a boss that's like barking down my back about, like, you've got to get these parts made, like, now, get them done, get them shipped out the door because customers are waiting. It's like, even my most stressful day is like, I go home at the end of the day and, like, I sleep easy because it's like, we're not curing cancer, we're helping kids learn how to cut metal. It's like, it's really important because the industry is really needing that right now. um but like, it's not a really stressful job, and it's got pretty great benefits, and it's a pretty chill environment. And then I've got, my shop here at home that I can do whatever and have some fun with. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
great.
that's kind of my story. I guess that's how I got into it.
So did you start the shop at home while you were still working in like job shops, or was that kind of as coinciding with you moving into teaching?
Yeah, good question. So I worked for a guy in California. His name's Jeff McWhinney. He makes these opening wedding rings. His company's called McWhinney Designs. Fantastic guy. I love him to death. Um, he, I think I discovered him on, not online actually. It was in a printed magazine, like Entrepreneur or Fast Company or something. And I saw his rings, and I was like, "Holy cow! There's another guy that's making machined titanium wedding rings. This is super cool." So just, sent him an email and just got to talking to him. Um, and he doesn't like to type a lot, so he was like, just call me. So we ended up, like, phone calls all the time. And eventually, he was in San Francisco. I'm in northern Utah, so it's only like 12 hours away. And my wife and I were looking for something to do for an anniversary. And so we went out there, got to meet him, kind of solidified the friendship a little bit more. And he offered me a job a couple months later. And I was in a job shop at the time, and it was like, you know what? This sounds like a pretty cool opportunity. Let's do that. So I moved to um, San Anselmo, San Rafael, North Bay area, and got to go work out there, live out there for about a year. Although I wouldn't really say it was work, because it was probably the most fun, um, like, job I've ever had. It was just phenomenal. Um, and it was all, uh, the design work, the production, the finish work, the assembly, meeting customers, just all of it. And it was just the two of us. Like, he was busy enough to keep me busy. Just needed some help, and, like, it was a great job. Um, After a while, we found out my wife was pregnant, and so we were like, you know what, San Francisco's kind of an expensive place to, have a kid and live
Yeah.
still. And so we were like, let's go back home to Utah, where cost of living is a lot cheaper. We've got family there. Um, but I was kind of sad about, like, well, I want to keep this job. And Jeff was pretty great. He was like, well, if you have a place to put a machine, the machine I have is only, it's the Haas office mill. It's only like the size of a fridge. So it's kind of like, if you've got a 10 by 10 garage, you can put it in there and still work. So it's like, hey, that's a good idea. So I actually gave my dad a bunch of money to build a shop in his backyard on his property. And so he built this shop and put the machine in it. So I worked for him from home for another 6 or 7 months, and he'd kind of slowed down. And he was kind of, we were kind of bummed about it. He's like, I can't afford to keep you, um, but I'll give you a good deal on some of that equipment. So he sold me the machine, um, a little lathe, a jeweler's lathe, a leaven lathe, and, let's see, like a tumbler, air compressor, just whatever you need to basically to run a little shop. And so I've kind of just had a little machine shop off of that. So that's how I got into my own stuff. I had a design that I guess if we patented it, I would be the big name on the patent, because I came up with the design. Um, and we worked a deal to, for the equipment and in trade for some of this design and stuff like that. So um, that's kind of how I got to the having my own shop, my own equipment. And then, I've, making money here and there. I add a microscope, add some more tools, just whatever. So yeah, kind of
Very
fun.
cool. Yeah, I
Hmm.
just looked up his rings. I didn't recognize, like, the name kind of rang a bell, but now that I see the rings, I've definitely seen them before.
Yeah, yeah. So he's a big bike guy. He's friends with probably a couple other people you've talked to. I know he's friends with Josh Ogle.
Okay,
Um, they were, I think Josh Ogle lived in the same neighborhood as him, and so they grew up, and so that's how I know Josh Ogle too. So just
such a
just from that
small world.
connection, small world, right? Yeah, it really is. You get into this and you just meet people all over. So kind of fun.
That's really cool. That is excellent. So I want to jump back kind of into your design then, because you have some really cool stuff. So like when
Thanks.
I mean I want to go into both your designs and then stuff that like you've designed for others. So like on that door handle, how much, I guess, input is the customer giving you on something like that? Like, are you doing a rough draft, sending it over, they're, touching it up, or, giving you comments, and then you go back through a few rounds, or was that one kind of hands off, or how'd that go?
Yeah, so that customer, he's pretty wealthy, and he's had a couple of my other products, and he just kind of sent me some messages and said, "Hey, would you be interested in designing this? I really need just like this really crazy, over-engineered, basically door handle." And he kind of gave me the specs of what it is, where it goes, what it's doing. Um, and then I was like, just kind of free reign on whatever. And he was like, "Yep, whatever you want." It's like, okay, I, I guess I
That's
better spend
epic.
some time like on Pinterest and look around for ideas or something like that. And so I did. I just kind of took other mechanisms and things that I've seen, and just you know, I don't sketch like by hand very much. I said I have artistic background. My mom's pretty great drawing by hand, freehand sketch and painting. Same with my sisters. Um, I guess I could, if I were to like develop or spend time to develop the talent, I could do it. But most of my sketching is CAD side. So I'll do it in SolidWorks and make just a rough model. I'd try not to like spend too much time with constraints. I'm kind of messy with the sketch at first, because it's like, am I going to get this job? Is it going to work? Like, do I have to start over from here? What is it going to do? And so I actually got really lucky that I just kind of pieced together some ideas and threw it in a model and sent him some renderings, and he was like, "Holy cow, I love it. That's gorgeous. Can you do this? Can you add that? Can you make this thinner?" So he had a couple of ideas to alter it, but for the most part, it was like there were probably only like two revisions in that thing, and it was just like what I came up with, and he was like, "Love it. Oh my gosh, that's awesome." So
How cool.
that was a fun one. It wasn't a great money maker because I kind of learned about um, you know time and definitely bit off more than I could chew. But it was a great project for the experience, for and mostly for the experience of just that, going, wow, this was like, I made $10 an hour on this, and
Right.
like that's pretty bad, and I'm doing it on the nights and like weekends too. So it took forever, and because he was pretty patient and just like, yeah, how's it going? You got any updates? And I'd send him some pictures, and or just show it on Instagram. He followed me on Instagram, and it was, I was showing stuff there. But he was pretty great with it. So
That's
that was a
cool.
fun one.
How did
Yeah.
he give you attachment points that were already on the cabinet, or did they make them
Yeah. So
for?
it was
Okay.
a glass door, and he basically said it's a what was it, like a quarter-inch hole through or something like that, and he wanted 6 millimeter. Well, I think he wanted 6 millimeter. I don't remember, but it was, six is close to quarter-inch anyways. So I just did 6 millimeter because I had a thread mill for it already, and um, but yeah, he gave me the distance center to center, and I just went with that. So
Cool.
it's like I want, I 3D printed a prototype and just like, got the idea of, okay, yeah, this is about the size of, what that's going to be. Give me an idea of what I'm working with here, and kind of big parts for my machine, um, at least lengthwise. But like other than that, it was pretty great. I've since done some bigger things that it's like, okay, I can kind of push the envelope on, what this little machine is capable of anyways. Haas has recommendations for like max tool size and stuff like that. But I've done some bigger things and it's done
Not too
great.
bad.
But I love doing little stuff too. So
Yeah. Well, what about like the rest of your product line then? Like, how did the tie clip come about? I mean, we already know how you wanted a
oh
wedding ring. So did you
yeah.
need a tie clip for something? And you were like, all
Uh-huh.
right.
Yeah. So the tie clip, I go to church on Sunday. I'm a good guy. And so I don't know, I've always wanted a tie clip, and I've probably got, I don't know, hundreds of models in SolidWorks of just things that, it used to be my like sit down and um do this as a hobby thing, just play on SolidWorks. And while I was at school anyways. And so I had all these designs, and it was just like one day I had like some I don't remember the company that makes the clamp, but it's an over center mechanism, and it was like the perfect little mechanism to like kind of, I guess, commandeer the mechanism to put into like my tie clip, because I kind of had this idea all of a sudden. And I was like, oh, that would be perfect. And so I just kind of, and the tie clip was pretty awesome actually, because I went from idea, let's make this tie clip on a Friday, to one in my hand on a Monday.
Oh, that's the best kind of
Like
project.
it was the fastest uh thing I've ever done in terms of like, I want to make this. And because like I do a lot of ring designs that like it's a year in the making, or it's, I designed this 3 or 4 years back, and it's just never made it, and I'm looking for something to do, and it's like, what I should do with this, let's alter this, change that, tweak this, and get a new idea out of it. But the tie clip was completely new, and it was done in a weekend. I went from sketch on SolidWorks. I just bought a Prusa MK2S
Okay.
printer, and little small parts for that printer, but I printed it on like Saturday, had the design all finished up on Saturday, printed it Saturday night. I went, you know what? This is cool, but I need to make a revision here because I don't like this. And so I changed it really quick, printed another one Saturday night. Um, I don't work Sundays, so I didn't really do anything with Sunday, but I was like, okay, I'm not going to print the next one. I know what I need to do before I go machine it. And so I went over to my shop on a Monday morning, and made a quick change. It's the same. I kind of use the same size stock for like rings or tie clips, or the fidget spinners that I made. It makes it easy. I use a lot of the same tools, so setup times are really pretty quick and efficient. And I whipped it out in like, I mean, it only took me a couple hours to get it done, and I was like, holy cow, this works really well. This is awesome. I love it. This is great, and I thought that was pretty cool. So um, I wish more people were interested in them. I don't think there's like a huge market for it. It's not like Grimsmo knives or something, but I'd love it if it was, because it's a pretty fun gig. It's just one size fits all. But
Right. No, it's
um,
a really cool product. I
yeah, it was fun. And I had somebody that told me, they're like, that's really cool. You should like put that in like a design competition or something. And so I was like, oh, okay. Well, tell me more. I think it was actually Yanko Design. Somebody pointed me off to Yanko, and they had a link to some design competition, and it was the A Prime design, international design.
I've never heard of it.
It's kind of like Red Dot. I mean, there's a handful of them, but it's a bigger one, and it's like, okay, cool. So I entered it into that, and I got oh gosh, I don't even remember if it was a second place or third place. I can't remember. I'm
That's
embarrassed now.
epic, though.
But like,
Congrats.
it was kind of cool. Thanks. Yeah, it was, out of like thousands of people submitting. I thought it was free, and I ended up like, I got pretty deep into it, and then it was like, oh well, you've got this entrance fee. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. I'm this close anyways. I'll just put it in. So
Right.
I won an award with that. And I don't know if it's like, I've heard people complain about Red Dot Design Awards, and it's like, well, you can just buy the Red Dot Design Award basically, because
Right.
if
Pay
you
to play
pay the
kind of
money,
stuff.
you get an award sort of thing. So I don't know if it's that or anything, but whatever. I thought it was kind of cool because like there's this part of making things that you're kind of like, holy cow, somebody just gave me money for this thing that was like a figment of my imagination, just a thought. Maybe I should talk them out of it. Like, do they really want this? Like, is that for real? You're kind of like, you're shocked almost, right? Um, but it's cool, like when people do that, because that's kind of how the world operates. It's like, Apple makes a cool phone, and so I'll give them money for the cool phone or whatever. It's like anything else. I like the Toyota 4Runner. I'm gonna, you know, pay them for that product. So it shouldn't be that or that shocking, but it was like, whoa, I've never sold anything, and I just sold this thing that I came up with. It's kind of neat. It's fun. It's rewarding. So
Definitely. And
and
then what
then
about your fidget spinner? 'Cause, I
uh
mean that like that they're so far past present anymore. But
yeah.
looking at your one where you have the mount of it, like a desk
Mm-hmm.
mount,
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
I had never really in my mind put those as like, oh, that's a fidget spinner that's mounted. I was always like, oh, that's something I would gladly buy and put on my desk.
Mm-hmm.
Like still even still today, like I'm like, oh, that's just like cool desk art kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I guess, when 2017, like the beginning of 2017 rolled around, and they were like becoming this big craze, and it's like there were a couple of I don't know how much you followed the fidget spinners, but there was these custom knife factory out of Russia.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so you're familiar. You've seen the Pepyaka was the one that they did, right? If you've seen that,
Oh
and
yeah.
it was like $200 or $300, and I was like, that thing is kind of cool looking, but there's no way I would pay that money for this thing that, like, at first I was like, okay, it does something. What does it do?
It
What is the
spins.
catch? And it's like, oh, it spins.
Yeah.
Oh my heck, that's so simple and so stupid. I'm not paying that for that, but I want one. Well, what if I do my
Honestly,
own?
I feel like if you were a machinist with access to machines at that point in time, if you didn't at least attempt to make a fidget spinner, you were purposefully being contrarian.
Uh
Like
huh.
you were like doing it, you were not doing it just to spite everyone else. Because I don't know anybody who wasn't like, I'll buy a bearing and I'll give it a shot. And see, like I've got two or three different 3D printed designs and one I think that I machined, and it never got anywhere to where I was like, oh yeah, I'm super proud of this and I'm going to put it up for sale. But it was like, you got to play around with it. It was fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the my my attempt to do that was like, so for the people, I don't. Is this recording? Are people going to see this? Do you have a video for this too? I didn't even
No,
think
no,
to
no,
ask you that. Okay.
no.
Well, anyways, you can see it because we're on video. But back here above that window in my shop, I had an old, and actually it's on my toolbox right now. You can kind of
I can
see it
see
right
it.
there.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah.
an old wood, uh, like World War II era UAV prop. And I've been into aviation. I like aviation stuff, and so I was like, oh my heck, a propeller is the perfect fidget spinner. I'll just miniaturize it, and make my own design. And so that's exactly what I did. I just made one up real quick. Like the profile, the airfoil on it is like not anything that would be engineered for like lift and thrust or anything like that, but it looks cool. It looks kind of similar to something you'd see. And so I just made one out of titanium really quick, and I had it on. This was the first time I had sold anything, actually. So this was the time where it was like, oh my gosh, somebody just bought something from me. Are you for real? Like I got to go make this now. Holy cow! But I had it on like some EDC forum, and people were just like, I got to have that. Where did you get that? Well, I made it. How much? I want one. And I was like, oh, well, I guess I got to think about like what my time is into making it. And so I just kind of, I think pricing my products is difficult too, but I just kind of came out with something, and it's like, well, I've got this much time into making it. If I wanted to sell one, like, I guess it'd be worth my time at like $400 or $500, which was like a lot for the spinner market, right? Like most everybody was like 25 to 200 or something like that. And so
Right.
saying $400 for this propeller was like, you're crazy, dude. No way. But there are a lot of people in the world, and I had talked to Chris Bathgate, and he was like, I think it's cool. Run with it, man. Here's what you do. Go create like a Google Docs spreadsheet or whatever, and you can put your orders in there, and then just have a Google form. So if people want to buy it, they just link it from your website and have like a sign up page. And I did that, and I shared it on a Facebook page. And overnight, I had like 25 orders or something like that. And I was like, whoa, I got a lot of work to do now. And I just made a whole lot of money. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like, am I scaled up to do this? I want to be doing this for like a year. And it kind of was. It did take me a while to catch up, but like, it was pretty awesome at the same time, because it kind of showed that there were people that are willing to pay for the artist touch, the personal touch, the limited edition touch, the all of these things, the high valued materials, stuff like that. So it was kind of fun, and I just jumped into it. But yeah, that was a fun project.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like pricing anything is kind of tough, and it takes a lot of experience, a lot of screwing up to like where you are
Hmm.
making $10 an hour, and you're like, oh, okay, I got to price that higher next time, or like maybe I don't want that kind of work, or even in like job shop stuff like I do, like we have slowly moved towards like, you know what, we don't need to win everything. We're not going to be everybody's machine shop. We just need the right customers and the right work that we do really well. And like
Hmm.
focusing that and realizing that has really helped us do good business. I'm not like pissed off because I took some job that I don't want and I'm making not enough money on it. It's like the jobs I take, I know I can kill and run with. And that's where we succeed, I think.
Yeah, you learn as you go, right? There are things that you're like, oh my gosh, that was terrible. I don't want to work for them anymore because they were terrible, or maybe I just messed up on this thing, or whatever. But you kind of learn as you go. So it's yeah, it's all an onward process, right?
Definitely.
Learning new stuff.
Well,
So
before we get on to questions, I also want to touch on education because I think that that's super important, and I really applaud you for doing that. Because like I went to a tech school and got my associates in machine tool technology, and like
hmm.
I think it's great that someone like you with such recent job shop experience is teaching.
Hmm.
Because like I had one of the most influential teachers for me was one guy who was an adjunct when I was starting there and
Hmm.
was still working at a job shop, and like he recognized that I really was into this stuff and like would show us videos or like show us speeds and feeds documents from like actual tool websites, not like be not force us to go look it up in the machinery manual or
Yeah.
machinery handbook.
Uh-huh.
So I think it's great that like you're able to provide that kind of perspective. But I guess I think the biggest question that so many people are trying to onboard new people and bring new people in because it's tough to find good help. What lessons have you learned about how to avoid some of the pitfalls of teaching somebody machining?
Oh, interesting. Hmm. I think, at least in my area, it's really interesting to kind of watch the dynamic of the shops and where I teach as an educational institution. Um, because there's a lot of shops. So northern Utah has, I think, I'm not great on the statistics, but I think Utah has the lowest unemployment in the nation right now.
Really? Wow.
And Utah has a huge amount of manufacturing facilities. So at least in the counties that I cover for like where I teach, the people that like feed into our students who we get as students, um, that that area has so much, um, and specifically machining, but manufacturing in general. And so we have a lot of need for machinists right now, and a lot of people uh, for making things, just manufacturing. But it's really interesting right now with the way wages are, because the machine shops, it's also kind of a low cost of living place where I'm at, which is nice. But that with that comes lower wages, and they're kind of lower for the country, I think. But it's interesting to see the shops that can't get enough people, and they wonder why, because they're only paying somebody to start, right out of our program at like 13, 14 bucks an hour. And right now that's like asinine, because there are there's a Cache Valley where I'm close to living has a lot of dairy production, and there's a company called Schreiber's, um, and Gosner's another one, and they do production line, dairy products, and they are hiring people like high school. You know, I don't even know if you need a GED or a diploma to work there, and you can go get like 18, 19 bucks an hour starting out. And these machine shops that take somebody that's got, a certificate, a couple years of experience, and it's like, hey, we're going to start you at 14 bucks an hour,
Mm-hmm.
it's great place to work. And it's like, well, yeah, the opportunities are going to be better there because you're going to learn more and the advancement's better. But like, bills got to get paid, you got to put food on the table. So I'm going to go work over there because it's kind of mindless work, and they'll pay me good money to do it.
Right.
Which is sad, but it's one of the things that I see with manufacturing that has a problem. Um, I guess, we got to face it that like machining is a skilled trade. There's a lot to know and a lot to understand, and experience plays a big part. And you find somebody that has all that, and right now they're worth a lot, but nobody wants to pay for that. But everybody wants it,
Right.
and it's like you gotta fill the gap. There's, I mean, where I'm at, all of these shops end up poaching employees from each other. It's like, I'll give you $1 more to come over here, and it's like, okay, well, they won't pay me more, so I'm gonna go over there. And they pack up their toolbox, and it's like, wait, we'll give you $1.25 to stay. Okay, fine, sure. And then the other company's like, well, we'll take it to $1.50 or $2, and it's ridiculous that it takes like threatening leaving to go anywhere. It's kind of sad. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I've experienced that firsthand. I want to say 2 shops ago that I worked at, 2 or 3. They hired me. I was really needing a job. I had like left the first shop I worked at, then was doing some contract programming and just really needed like, a job. And they hired me in at way below what I was making before and way below what I was worth, seemingly because they didn't believe my resume.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, well, we'll see where you're at, and in a couple of weeks we'll raise you up. And that couple of weeks turned into like 6 months. And I was like, hey guys, I'm leaving for another job. And they were like, no, like we'll raise you up to this. We'll make you like shift lead. We'll do this. Cause I like had, I'm not going to say I revolutionized their programming department, but like
Mm-hmm.
nobody there knew even really how to use Mastercam. And like I
Yeah.
had gone to school for Mastercam. I didn't use it in years, but
Mm-hmm.
I had at least had
Some
formal training in it.
exposure. Uh-huh.
Yeah, like I remember programming a job, and I wasn't there the day it was supposed to run, and they called me and they go, I'm trying to simulate your operations, but I don't see any of the model in the correct orientation. I was like,
Mm.
what are you talking about? And I'm thinking on it. I'm like, well, you just go into the WCS manager and activate the right WCS. And he goes, what's the WCS manager?
Oh man.
And I was like, what? How are you programming in Mastercam with what? And yeah, so it was, anyway, they ended up being like, oh, we'll give you all this stuff. And I was like, put it in writing. And you know
Mm-hmm.
what? The next day I came in, they're like, well, actually, we can't quite pay you that much. And actually, we can't do this. And I was like, all right,
Okay,
I'm
see
out
ya.
here. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
thanks, guys. I appreciate it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough. Like you really got to pay for good labor. Like one good person is worth many bad hires that are going to be in and out of the shop. And it's
Mhm.
like, just invest in somebody and pay them what they're worth.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it's a good situation to be in right now because if I don't like where I'm at, it's always uh, a temptation to be like, okay, well, I'll go over there and make some more money, I guess, if you don't like me. And
Right.
see ya. Um, not that like I'm a bad employee that can like get away with everything, but like it's kind of sad that that's another thing that's happening too. It's like you get people that have these terrible we call them like the soft skills, right? Like they're pleasant to be around. They show up on time, they do what they're told, and they're not fighting. They don't come in drunk or stoned or something like that. Um, that was kind of a funny thing. Like when I worked for Jeff McWinney in California, he was always afraid I was going to leave him and go work somewhere else because it's like, dude, you come from a place where people have values and you're in a place that they don't. And so like, George showed up yesterday and he was drunk 3 hours late and he, uh, ran the spindle into the table and, like I got to pay him still. And it sucks. And he was just like, don't leave me, please. You're like such an anomaly in the machining industry. And maybe I'm not, but he liked to think I was because of I guess the experiences he had. But I mean, a lot of the people that I've worked with are they're good people, and so it's I don't know. I be a good person, right? That's another thing that I like to tell people, tell my students. It's like if you're a jerk, not pleasant to be around, like right now, you can probably be tolerated at work because people need somebody so bad. But there's probably going to come a time when like you being a jerk at work isn't going to get you anywhere, and they'll let you go.
Yeah.
So like,
Well, if
be
you're
nice.
considered for like a promotion and there's somebody at your same level who's not a jerk, you're going to get
Hmm.
passed over time after time.
Yeah.
So I
So
totally agree.
yeah, having those soft skills is a good thing to have, and I try to convey that to students and people that want to get into this because I grew up with it. Like my parents are great, and taught me to be nice to other people.
Right.
And do what you say you're gonna do. And just I don't know, just be nice. Try
Yeah.
to be a pleasant person. So
Are there any skills you see consistently lacking in students coming up,
it's
or
there.
things that they
There's
misunderstand quite
yeah,
frequently?
and a lot of it's not really so much the machining. It's just like so. I don't know about you, but like when I was in grade school through high school, at all my school, like I had a piece of paper handed to me, and I read it. It had the instructions there, and I would put my name on the top. I can't tell you how many students I'm like, who the heck does this belong to? There's no name on it. We have information, like there are blanks in boxes you're supposed to fill out. Why don't you fill it out? Like, and then you come and ask questions, and it's like, well, did you read the assignment? No. Well, why not? I think people's um, attention spans are getting less because we live in this time of Amazon Prime 2-day shipping and
Right.
everything's got to be,
TikTok
we want
and
5G, we want it now. If it's
yeah.
not a YouTube video tutorial, I don't want to listen, I don't want to learn, I don't want to do it. And so we get kind of frustrated because um, at least with our high school kids, that can be a big problem, but it can be a serious problem with the adults too. And it's like, you're going to have some time, like, I don't know, the job shops I worked at, and I was done with the job. Like I had a, um, like an employee stamp so I could stamp off, I was the one that finished this job or whatever. And then it goes to inspection or then it goes to welding or whatever department after that. But like you have to be accountable, you're responsible for your work. Right. And I do see a problem with that in people
Mhm.
that they just like don't care or something, or I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's a different generation. Uh, and it's kind of challenging to work with some of these people. So
I can see it.
I
I've
get
definitely dealt
frustrated
with
with that.
adults like that. Like I've known a few guys where they would make bad parts or something, and they'd be like, oh, they'd come to engineering and be like, I don't know why this isn't working, and we'd be like, well, did you read the instructions? And then
Hmm.
they'd go through and they'd be like, oh yeah, no, I completely forgot that step. It's like, yep, huh.
We gave you
So
some instructions. You should follow
yeah,
them.
it's like
But
it's
like,
2 pages. Just read the. It's got pretty pictures and everything.
uh-huh.
Just read it and follow along, and you should make a good part.
Yeah. As far as like the skills though, like I think a lot of students that at least that we get, they do pretty good with learning, picking things up. Um, my boss, who was actually my high school teacher, it's kind of fun to work with your high school teacher, have him as your boss because he's a great guy and he's a great friend. But we kind of joke um, about there's some movie that he would talk about and like talking about hunting dogs. Some dogs are hunting dogs and some dogs are not. And he'll sometimes we'll have a student that's just like they're not going to make it. They're not going to get it. And instead of saying that, he'll just say some dogs just won't hunt. And we can just go, yeah, it's very true.
Oh,
Um, and I don't think machining or manufacturing is like so difficult that if it doesn't come easy to you, you can't get it, because I've seen some people that it's quite the challenge for them, but they're very driven, very motivated. And it takes some more time, but they start to understand. There are some things that are, completely foreign concepts. I mean, teaching people how to read a vernier micrometer sometimes is like, this isn't that hard, man.
yeah,
It's not. I'm sorry. Like, maybe this isn't for you. You're going to find it somewhere else, right?
yeah,
Um, but we get that with high school students, especially. And that's the best time too, because like it's free for them and they can go, oh, this is a lot of work. There's too much math, or it's too complex. Like, but I really love working on diesel engines and they're simpler and I'm going to go do that. And it's like, you know what? That is great because you're good at it too and you like it. So go do that. Or, whatever it is, robotics or drafting or whatever. So
yeah,
machining is not for everybody, but if you're in it and you like it and you're decent at it, you can you can make a good living at it, I guess.
yeah, definitely. Well, let's get into some of the questions. Tux Garage asked, "Why titanium?"
Um, I like the way it looks. I like the way it machines. It's challenging to machine. Um, but once you get used to it, like I hear students all the time, they're complaining about aluminum or well, maybe not so much aluminum because it's so easy, but at least with steel, it's like, oh man, this is tough, and it's like, dude, that's nothing. Let me show you something. Let's go grab this piece of titanium that I have a piece of scrap of, and I'll show you deflection.
Right.
So I like the way that it machines. It finishes really nice. Um, it's lightweight and strong, so there's an aspect to it that um, at least for like the rings, there I like the seemingly like wearing nothing sort of thing. Um, but it's strong too. The lightweight and strength combination is great. But yeah, that's mostly it. I like the way it looks. It machines nice. I'm used to it now. Um, I'll be cutting something in steel and be like, wait, what? Oh crap! I didn't. I can probably go a lot faster, and that doesn't sound great because I'm probably going too slow for it. And let's go speed it up or something. Um, but yeah, I like titanium. It's cool.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It's got a value to it. People seem to understand that it's more expensive, more difficult to work with, and that places, at least from my product standpoint, it means, oh, there's a little bit more effort required to make this rather than like doing it in aluminum.
Right. Right.
So
Well, and it has that, like, even if it wasn't deserved, it has that buzzword. People see.
yeah, yeah,
It's the same thing with like aerospace grade 6061. You're like,
uh-huh,
that's just aluminum. Like that's normal. But like
yeah.
people who aren't in the trade, they're like, oh, I gotta have that.
hmm So there was actually funny story. And this is actually kind of more that I didn't really talk about in my backstory, my origin of being into this, at least with the rings. When I was getting married, um, there's a company called Rogue DZN. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I don't think
Um,
so.
his website's no longer around, but the guy that owned it did machined titanium jewelry. That was it. And he's a designer. He's not a machinist, so he had it farmed out. But he's got a degree in design. He's been to some good schooling for design work, and he's really talented. I don't know if he was head of design at one time at Oakley, but he worked for Oakley as a designer. I believe he did an internship at Nike as well, and now he's the lead designer at Red Camera. So if you're familiar with like cinema
Oh,
cameras,
cool.
so he's the one that has the very stereotypical look of what the Red cameras look like. So his name's Matt Tremblay, and he had this pretty awesome jewelry company that was limited edition, very very unique in terms of like what it was that he made, because he had this, it's I would say an art take on it that at least in the jewelry industry, it's all noble metals and precious stones, right? So the value comes from more of like what it's made of more than what it is. It's a very lucrative business, and it's marked up so much it's kind of disgusting. But anyways, his take was, let's make something that looks freaking awesome because it's engineered to look freaking awesome, and then let's cut it out on a 5-axis in titanium. And the way titanium surfaces, well, he'd leave all the scallop marks from a ball end mill, and I just was like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing ever. So he had this wedding ring that I really wanted. It was called the revolver. It's 6 pieces. It's done on a 5-axis. It has to be done on a 5-axis because it's off-axis bolting. And I was like, that's it. That's what I want to make for my wedding ring. And I contacted him because I don't want to like get in trouble. I don't know. I'm always like I want to do things right and be nice and not step on people's toes. So I emailed him and I said, hey, I'm really interested in this ring, but like I'm a cheap, poor college student. I can't afford this, but I have access to 5-axis, and I'm kind of teaching myself 5-axis at work. And I said, hey, would you let me take this design and try to reverse engineer it and make one myself, just for myself, for a wedding ring? Are you cool with that? And he was like, yeah, sure. Knock yourself out. Don't try to sell them or like give them away to people. Like, just make one. I'm cool with making just one. And I was like, yeah, cool. It's for my wedding ring. That's all I want. I'm cool with that. And so it took me a lot of time to reverse engineer it, because I had never played with SolidWorks. But he was like, oh, you gotta learn SolidWorks. So he was the one that pushed me into that. So I kind of taught myself SolidWorks. I figured it out. I made it, and I thought it was pretty cool. And that was kind of like the spark of, well, I can't sell this, but like I love this. This was the most fun I've ever had. I should try to do my own thing. And so I started coming up with my own designs for rings, and that's how I started. But his take on the limited edition, the aerospace grade titanium, that was his thing. Is like he was a very good salesman too, because I mean, like, any CNC machinist will look at his stuff and go, yeah, it's cool, but like I've done just as crazy stuff for NASA or any aerospace part, right? You're making anything aerospace, and it can get really complex. And so he was kind of, I don't want to say arrogant, but he kind of had this, he wanted to play a good salesman and push his products because they were really expensive. Like the ring that I wanted was $4,300, and everything else was like way up from there. I mean, he's got a bracelet that was like 161 parts. That's all 5-axis made, and it's like, I think it was 87 grand or something like that, and he made 5 of them. So it's kind of like the art for art's sake. But any machinist would look at it and go, yeah, there's some crazy machining there, but like it's not that intense. But if you don't know that, if you're not a machinist, if you're not into manufacturing, and you have billions of dollars to blow, this was the guy that would kind of say, I got something for you, and it's going to cost you a lot of money.
Right.
And So I did think that was kind of cool, but it was just the um, kind of bragging about the materials a little bit that I was kind of like, well, now that I know a little bit about titanium, I mean, yeah, it's kind of tough to work with, but like there's tougher,
Right.
I'd rather cut titanium than Inconel any day,
Yeah, same.
or Monel, or some of these Waspaloy, Hastelloy. I don't want to touch them. I know that there's people that's their bread and butter, but like I like titanium. It's fun. So
It's
yeah,
cool. Yeah, just look up the ring. That's really neat.
yeah. So I did one of those, and it was my kickstart into wanting to make things to sell to people, and I like it. It's fun.
Definitely. It's
He's
funny actually. Your rings come up as like
I
related
know.
images.
He
If I.
probably hates me for that. Because I think he got kind of mad at me when I would email him and I'd never get responses back after a while, and I asked somebody that had one of his products, and it's like, he thinks you tried to steal something from him. I was like, really? That's weird. I never tried to sell his thing. I wanted it for a wedding ring, and I still have it. It kind of doesn't fit me very. I learned a bunch on that project, but um, I like the opening rings a little bit better now, so that's what I wear for a wedding ring. But I still have it. I have a jewelry, a pelican case is my jewelry case of like things that I've
Nice.
made that I show off to people, or whatever. But so
That's
yeah,
great.
I he's a cool guy, and he's pretty inspiring because his design talent is outrageous. But um, whatever. If he doesn't like me because I come up in his Google image searches, whatever.
Well, it's like a similar aesthetic, but they're clearly different products. You
Yeah.
know.
Well, that's one thing that I get into with design is like original design is very I'd say it's almost impossible because nobody lives in a white box.
Right.
And as far as design works, so this is another question I think somebody had in for me, that it's like, how do you come up with your designs? I
Yeah. Yeah.
look at the
So
world
the other
around
one from
me.
Tuck's Garage was how do you get the inspiration for your design?
Yeah.
So this is
Yeah.
perfect.
So I look at the world around me. I mean, I really like nature now. I've come to really love the way that nature does things, and I still am like always thinking of like, how can I introduce that into like a design? But as far as like where do I get the aspects from? There's so much cool stuff, and there's way better designers out there than me. But I can go and look at just thumb through Instagram in design stuff, or um, Pinterest or Google image search. There's just lots of revenues to go, or lots of venues to go look through to find inspiration. Um, I mean, like there's a lot of stuff that's like, that Oakley had influence from, sports cars,
Right.
Italian sports cars, or any sports cars for that matter. Um, so yeah, I just start to look at the world around and go, that's kind of cool the way that looks. I want to do something that looks like that. If I have an idea of something I want to make, that's what I'll do. But yeah, I think as far as like original design, unique, I struggle to think that it exists because nobody is absent from the influence of the world around them.
Right.
Um, it goes for any art type, right? Like somebody that paints pictures is going to be influenced by somebody else's paintings at one point because they have to have an interest in it, and they see somebody else that does it and go, I like what they do, I want to do that sometime too. And then they start to look at the world around them and go, oh, look at that tree, that's beautiful, I want to paint that tree. Or look at the way that building, was the architecture of that building was made, it's really cool, I want to do that kind of stuff too. So i I think humans are really copycats.
Yeah. Well,
you
there's
know
that saying, "There's nothing new under the sun." Like, and I
yeah,
totally agree with that. Like,
yeah.
I yeah, you're always going to be inspired by somebody, and
Hmm.
I think that that's how you kind of find your own flair. Is you, especially like what you did. Like, I feel like I watch a lot of comedy, and that's what a lot of comedians say is that like when they first started out, they were doing like copycat routines of other
Hmm.
comedians that they really liked, and it's like through that you find your own voice. And I
Yeah,
think that's the
yeah.
same way with design. Like by making that ring, you're like, well, this is cool, but like
Oh,
I
totally.
would do it this way.
Yeah, exactly. Because people, I'll get asked that all the time. People say, "How did you come up with this?" Like, I'm not a creative person. How did you come up with this? And it's like exercising a muscle. If you don't put the work into it, you're not going to develop the muscle. Like I said earlier, like I don't sketch things, um, but if I put myself to do it, I could get pretty good at it because I like to draw. I like to doodle. My favorite thing about teaching is having a whiteboard in my office because I'm always out in the shop and it's like, come here, let's go to my office for a second, and I'll go. I just grab the markers and I can put it on the whiteboard in a bigger scale, and I do it good enough that people understand what I'm talking about. Um, so yeah, I think developing the talent for it just takes the work. You got to put yourself into it. And some of my designs, like the very first things that I designed were like, I think they're very basic and rudimentary now. And I go back to them and it's like, oh yeah, I remember when, that was like the first original idea I thought I had, and it was like so crazy to me that I just came up with this. And now it's like, no, that's kind of a dumb idea. I'll set that one aside, or, I'm not going to visit that for a while. Maybe I'll do something with it. But it was really just start to design things, start to I did doodle a little bit, just draw sketches. I mean, I still have, some of the, like, I think the first ring that I did, the triangle, I don't know if you've seen my triangular band ring, but that was like the first ring that I came up with. And I think I have the napkin sketch that I did at work. Like, it was like uh, what's the, I think it was like a Subway napkin or something that I was just like, I had just finished lunch, I got a part that's got like a 45-minute runtime, parts are deburred, my area's clean, and I'm like, I'm bored, and so I just started doodling, and it's like, I want to make another ring. And, so I did that, but it's just doing that kind of stuff. So,
That's really
yeah.
cool. Well, the last question I wanted to touch on from Car Curry PGH was, how did you make the jump to machining only luxury objects, as you seem to specialize in? And it sounds like maybe that's not an intentional jump, but what keeps you in that area?
Um, I have expensive taste and I have an eye for quality. And I think a lot of people tend to get that in machining because you start to look at things and see how they're made. And I mean, like, you can tell by looking at somebody's work if it was good or if it was not good. I mean, there is some great quality that comes out of China. I mean, look at all of our electronics, for example. Like, at least, Apple has amazing quality. Samsung's got great quality.
Oh yeah,
So it's not that China makes bad stuff, but you do see things, and we do joke about it a lot, that it's like, oh, yeah, it was made in China, and you can see things that are made poorly. And so it was kind of that I like to see people's hard work do something of value. Um, and you can see that in some things, right? A lot of the, you can look at the handle that I did and go, there's some time in that. You put some effort into doing that thing, and even though I lost money, like, I wasn't gonna stoop to a level where I just produced garbage. I want to make something that says that I do good work. I guess I kind of hold myself to a high standard. Um, it's John Grimsmo would say going full Grimsmo,
right.
and I before I knew who he was, I was just like, it's just I have a standard and I'm going to hold myself to that standard. And I kind of discovered that in doing my own stuff, that there's no quality control in my stuff except for me. So if I go, oh, you know what, this is not good, I set it aside and I have to do it over again. Um, like, it was always painful when I made a propeller, and I had to anodize the tips because everybody liked the blue anodized tips, and it was a really simple process. I just used really good 3M Scotch tape, like the clear stuff that you buy at, you can get it at Walmart. But I would kind of like burnish the tape really well under a microscope and make sure, because the first time I masked it off and went to anodize it, um, the anodizing got up under the tape and it went up the blade. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't, this sucks, because I just put, like 3 hours into machining this thing, and I can't ship it now because it's got a blemish on it. Like,
Right.
I don't want to let this go because it doesn't meet my standard. It doesn't look good. And it was really defeating, because it's like, but it's still like, it would still make a good spinner. And it was down the road that I was like, I had set it aside, and I was like, what am I going to do with that now? And then my dad did a lot of motorcycle stuff, and he was always rebuilding a motorcycle, and he'd take like clutch covers off and sand them and polish them. And I was like, you know what? I'll set this aside and sand it and polish it to a mirror polish. And so I've done a couple of those, but um, yeah, I just try to hold myself to a high standard on things, and it's kind of pushed me to do stuff that is, a little bit more high end, I guess. Um,
I
I
imagine they
think,
have the higher end goods have the cost associated with them that allow you to be a perfectionist.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And there's good money with it, although I guess you learn in how to make the good money. But it can be a fun project. I get bored with monotonous stuff. So like, if somebody wants me to make something, and they want like, I did some prototypes for a guy that did a Kickstarter down a couple hours south from me, and they were these little titanium toothpicks, and he had them made in China for really cheap, and he just needed some new prototypes made. And he came up and visited me, and I told him, I was like, you're gonna pay for my time. And he's like, that's okay. I want that. I want, you have good quality. I like your work. Um, and you can do it pretty quick, because China will take forever and
Right.
cost probably as much as what you want to charge me. Um, but he wanted me after that. He loved it so much. He's like, you want to make like 10,000 of these? And it's like, no. That does not sound fun.
Right.
Like the set, and it was like a lathe job too. And it's like, not on a mill. This is a lathe part, and I have a mill, and that's not going to be a fun project. Like, I have a lot of time into making this for a reason. No, I'm happy to do a prototype for you and make something look good, but I don't want to make 1,000 of them. So I I got to a point, even with like doing propellers, because I made limited runs of everything. It's like, I'm going to do 25 of this option and 25 of this option. And it was like, I'm going to put the serial number on it, engrave it in the machine, and I'm going to hold myself to that. Like, I could have sold so much more of that blue tipped propeller if I had just said, yeah, I'll do it. And I probably should have, because it would have been nice to have them more money. But there was just, I want to hold myself to that standard. And I got bored making them too. It was like, just doing the same thing. Now it would be like, anytime that somebody, because I'll make some of the ones that are still available. Somebody will email me just out of the blue, and it's like, hey, did you still make these? And it's like, uh, that's an easy $500. Yeah, I'll make it.
Right.
I've got the tool. I've got the material. It's just load and touch off stuff again, and hit go. And yeah, I'll do that. Easy money. Um,
Are
so
you
I
window
like kind
machining
of stuff like that.
those?
No, I do something that's a little bit different, that not a lot of machinists know about. Actually, I used to do that. I don't anymore. I just used soft jaws for making the propellers now. Um,
Really?
hmm Yeah, I
Oh,
just I
interesting.
just I just surfaced the soft jaws. I'll send you a picture of them later. It's not too complex, but it works really well. I made sure I had some good surfaces to actually hold them. Um, and when I did the 3-blade propellers, I actually had to get really. I used a Mighty Bite fixture, and did some pretty creative stuff with that. Fixture design, that's fun too. I like
Oh
that
yeah,
kind of stuff, because
I
that's
totally
like
agree.
design work with no strings attached. I mean, as far as like making the part, but that's the only string. But you just get to design something, right, and just um, go for it. But yeah, I use this method, um, I don't know if you've ever seen or heard people use bismuth for work holding.
I have heard of it. I've heard that and like castable like
Yeah.
epoxy
Uh-huh.
stuff.
Yeah.
So you
So
were
I've never.
using that for the prototypes?
Yeah, and I use it for all my rings and tie clips and stuff. I don't.
No
I don't.
way.
Yeah. It's a little bit time consuming. Um, but in the right circumstance, it's a huge time saver at the same time. Um, so maybe you should get Jeff McWhinney on here and have him do a podcast episode with you, and he could talk about it more too. Because I learned it from him. I had never seen or heard of it, but it's a brilliant idea. I mean, it works incredibly well. I've made watch hands, like 10 thou thick watch hands with it, and it can fail sometimes,
Right.
but you can make some ridiculously difficult to hold parts with bismuth. I've made parts that, I mean, like you could machine a perfect sphere with it. Um, I've made like airplane. I made this little teeny model airplane thing that was just machined out of titanium. It's like an inch big. I don't know where I have it, but it has no flat surfaces anywhere on the part and completely held with bismuth. It gets kind of tricky because it's a two op job, and the
Right.
second op is your bismuth work holding. And so it can be difficult if you don't have like some straight walls to hold on to. Um, and so I have some methods that kind of help with that. But
So are you like window machining it but without tabs and then backfilling that side with bismuth and then flipping it over?
I've done that, actually, doing the bottle opener for Discommon. That's how I did that, and I wasn't planning on it. Like, that project was kind of miraculous. Like, it was a godsend. The ideas that came to me as I was doing it, it totally was, because I got to a point and I was like, oh crap. Oh crap. What have I done? What did I just do? I've got to ship this in like 2 days too. Oh my gosh.
Well, you only had like one piece of stock too, right? Or something like that?
Three.
Oh, okay. That's
But
good
but
then.
there was enough time into making it that it was like, I'm not starting this over.
Right.
But anyways, yeah, I had done tabs in window, and but my tabs weren't very big, and I was like, there's a lot of mass to this part for like I didn't give myself enough tabs. Usually when I use tabs, it's like, oh my gosh, I way overthought the tab, and it's like, now I've got to, like, go add another machining operation to cut the tab smaller to take it out, because I
Right.
just think it's like it's never going to work. And so I I went the opposite route on that one and made the tabs way too small, and it was like, this is not good. So just before I would have cut the tabs off, I had this perfect little cavity set up, and had just like, it couldn't have been a better fit if I had planned it and designed it that way. But I happened to have a piece of material that like slid under the part between the jaws and the top of my vise, because I have small vices, and so I used um, the outside jaws of my vices to hold this thing. And I had this piece of titanium plate that was, I mean, it was probably like a 1 thou clearance fit between the part and the top of the vise, and it slid in, and it was like, it's not going anywhere, and it's completely closed off, and I have a cavity now, and I'm going to pour in my bismuth to where I need it to, and it held it just perfectly.
Oh, that's
Um,
amazing.
it worked so well. I got so lucky, and it made it so I wasn't like 5 days in to a 7 day job and had to start over. So it worked. Just it was a godsend, really. But yeah, it's a really cool method to hold things um, that are just odd, and I think that's how McWhinney got into using it, because I think he worked at 3M as an R&D machinist, and they just had all sorts of weird stuff, and it was like, how are we going to hold that? And we only need to make one? Well, we could do soft jaws, but we're probably going to spend a lot of time cutting soft jaws, and they may not work. Let's do bismuth. So it was actually, I think, when he told me that it was like first used for like pipe bending for thin wall tubing. So if you can, heat it up, pour it into a tube, and then you could take like a 20 thou tube and bend it on a pipe bender, and it doesn't crinkle and break the tube.
Oh,
And then
interesting.
you take a torch and you heat up the tube under the band, and you just pour it out, and it's just really awesome idea. But at the same time, it just works miracles for titanium, or for we're holding these little teeny tiny odd shaped pieces. So it's not so much of doing like a window. I do a nest, and in the nest, so I usually get like it's like 3 inches long by 1 inch wide, like half-inch thick chunk of tie, and I'll nest all my parts in that piece, machine all the pieces together, and then I have either holes in the parts that I can use for locating, or I'll just like leave some space in the nest to put in some like location pins and studs, and I just drill and ream the holes, and then I have a fixture that has the matching pins.
Mhm.
And you usually, I mean, two surfaces, is pretty good to work with. So I flip it over, put it on those pins in the fixture, and it's, the fixture's kind of a cavity again too, and then I just put a clamp on the part so it doesn't move, and then pour in the bismuth, wait for it to harden, and it's holding pieces that, for rings it's awesome, because if I do a size 9 or a 9 1/8 or 9 1/4, it's a different program, right? And so like I'd have to have a different set of soft jaws for every component to that ring, and these rings can take, some of them are 5 unique pieces or 6 unique pieces, and it's like I'd have to have a set of soft jaws for every one of those pieces, and it's like the size of your tooth or smaller. These
Right.
are medical sized implant sized parts, and the bismuth just does it perfect. So the extra time that it takes, because you gotta preheat your fixture, otherwise you're pouring in, some hot molten metal and into like a cool fixture. So I preheat the fixture. You gotta heat the stuff up on a burner unit on a, I get a pot from like Goodwill or whatever, and just throw it in there and melt it. You got to be careful with the fumes. I'm always worried about, like, I used to use stuff that had lead and cadmium in it, and it was like
Oh,
sometimes I walk away and I come back and it's kind of smoky, and I was like, oh crap, I left that 20 minutes ago, and it takes like 2 minutes to get to temperature, and now it's burning, and now I've got lead that I'm breathing, or worse, cadmium. So I
right.
found a safer uh, alloy that's just bismuth and tin. It's a little higher melting point, but it's a little safer, I feel, to use. So I don't kill myself inhaling toxic fumes or something.
Yeah,
So
probably a good idea.
yeah, definitely. I did have a little. Well, McWhinney had an exhaust fan over the top that I didn't have, so I actually have my garage door open, or my windows, or whatever, and it just, airs out okay. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the machining industry that can be kind of scary, toxic, and uh, I don't like that.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people like have had issues with coolant, and I don't want to breathe it. I don't want to touch it on my skin, because like your skin is, I mean, I don't know if you know anything about like in the 60s when they did acid, but like you just drop it on the back of your hand and
Right.
it absorbs. So like
Oh yeah.
when I heard that, and it's like I get coolant on my hands, if it's going somewhere, alcohol disappears pretty fast, but um, who's to say how fast coolant absorbs into your skin? So I try to be safe with my stuff too. I know a lot of people are just like, whatever, you're weird. I could go off for hours in health stuff too. Um,
I'm sure you have to deal with it a lot at the school.
Not so much actually. It's more of a personal. That's like my biggest hobby outside of like making things is learning about health,
Oh really? Okay.
physics, biology, quantum mechanics, quantum biology, that kind of stuff. And so I'm always interested in learning about that, and just always finding out like, I don't know if you've seen people that, use the blue blocking glasses. It's like I have every light in my house goes to red at night, because it's like I don't want any blue light. And
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, I'm big into learning about like circadian biology, and how it affects like all of the processes of the human body. It just interests me, because uh, nobody wants to wake up in the morning and be like, oh, I feel like garbage. This is awesome.
Right.
Everybody wants to feel their best. So I get made fun of sometimes, because it's like, I'm always trying to eat healthy, or get in the sun, or just do these things that people think are odd. But it's I don't care. I'll do my weird stuff and see how it turns out. You do your own stuff and let me know. Let me know how your your toxic environment works for you down the road.
Exactly.
But
Well,
yeah.
that brings me to shop news and new things. Are there any new designs that you're looking at releasing or working on right now that you would be willing to
Um,
share?
I don't have anything right now. I probably should come up with something. I need to go back through my stuff and find some design that I should go play with. Because I have a couple of rings that I've yet to make. Um, but I'm working on a project right now, doing another collaboration. I won't say with whom at the moment, because it hasn't been released yet. But in next couple months, I'll have these things done and shipped off to him, and he'll be selling them and showing it, and I can show it after that. But so I've got some cool titanium stuff coming here with him, this guy, and should be pretty cool.
Awesome. Well, we'll keep our eyes out then and, see what comes of it.
Yeah, I don't have any new equipment or anything like that. I don't get to buy new stuff all that often. Being a hobby machinist, um, is kind of hard to buy new equipment. So there's going to be a time when rebuilding the office mill isn't doable anymore, and I need to get a new one, and it's going to be a little harder to achieve that down the road if I don't like start saving for it now. But um, I would love to get a new office mill or an office lathe to kind of add in. Um, but yeah, I just kind of work with what I have. I've got the mill, I got the lathe, I got microscope, anodizing, tumbling. Um, yeah, that's about it. I do 3D printing for fun, just because it's great to take an idea and go, I can have it in my hand and not waste the material on the mill. I can probably do some things as quick on the mill as say like the Form 3 sometimes, but it's a little bit um, easier to do it in the 3D printer. Just hit print rather than go program it and go make it. So I like that. But
Yeah, no, I've been a big proponent of that. I know there's so many people that, I guess it's like fringe people who are like, oh, it's going to take our jobs one day, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, it makes your job easier. Like, it means that
mhm.
you're not making garbage. Like, you're making stuff that most likely has been figured out a little bit more than, like, I'll design something and print it and be like, oh, it's way smaller than I thought it was, or it doesn't
Yeah.
fit my hand at all, or, things like that.
Uh-huh.
So I think it's great.
Yeah. I love the printing for that. It's super cool. Can be expensive with, like the form. But man, I love the Prusa. It's awesome. Filament's cheap, and if it's too small, I'll just scale it up so I have an idea of like this is what it's going to look like. Keep in mind it's bigger now, but this is what it is, and it happens that quick. Materials cheap. The printers like virtually never have problems. It's just an incredible little machine. That was probably the best business investment ever. Was that Prusa? I love it.
Yeah.
Just a phenomenal tool.
Yeah. Everyone
So.
who has them says such wonderful things about them. I definitely have thought about
Well, I was
one
I
at some
was
point.
yeah, I was so hesitant to get one for such a long time because the nature of what I do is small stuff, and it's like, it's not FDM printing is just not great for teeny tiny components, right? And somebody told me, they were like, "Well, just make it bigger. If you all you're doing is prototyping anyways, just scale it up a little bit so that the printer can print it." And I was like, "That's genius. Okay, I'm sold. I'll get one." And $800, and it was like, or whatever it was. I can't remember how much I paid for it, but yeah, that's an awesome tool. Love them.
That's
So.
excellent. Well, that brings me to the last question I ask every guest, which is, what did you research this week? And it can be machining related, it can be anything related. It doesn't, anything under the sun. It's just always really kind of cool to see what other people in the trade are, geeking out on.
hmm that's a good question because I am always researching like a billion things at a time. I don't know how I get anything done because I can go from one tangent to another so quick, and it's like I need to look up how to use this tool or this method of learn a little bit more about this in machining, or again, health. I spend a lot of time. I'm embarrassed I haven't listened to very many of the Within Tolerance podcasts, and I'm catching up on them now. I've been listening to at least people that I've talked to and met, and it's like, oh great, Danny Rudolph, I love Danny. I'm gonna listen to Danny. Oh, I'm gonna listen to Chris. I'm gonna listen to Jeff Sapp. I've met Jeff. I know Jeff. I've been listening to him.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great. I'm going into them more, but I have a half an hour commute on my way to work, so I'm always listening to something. It's like people ask me what I like to listen to for music, and it's like, I don't know anymore, because I just listen to podcasts and find YouTube videos for like things that I feel are going to help me be better, rather than like just enjoy listening to music, or zone out listening to music, because you don't even have to pay attention to it. But I'm always listening to podcasts, um, or like some webinar or something from somebody. So like, I guess this week I've always got a handful of books. I've got several books that I'm trying to read, so it takes me forever to get through books, because I've got like 10 at a time. I'm trying to read The Fourth Phase of Water by Dr. Gerald Pollack, Inventing Bitcoin by Jan Pritzker. I've been in a lot of Bitcoin rabbit holes lately, because that one's pretty incredible too. I could go off on that for a long time too. Light water magnetism. Who is that by? Can't remember. Going somewhere, the truth about a life in science by Dr. Andrew Marino. The Body Electric by Dr. Robert O. Becker. The Epipaleo Prescription by Dr. Jack Cruz. There's so many things that I'm always
kidding.
I'm going into 1,000 rabbit holes all the time, and like my wife is just like, well, what did you learn today? There's always something that you're going to be talking about at dinner, and it's like, what'd you pick up today? Because there's always something, and I just feel like I don't like to sit still and do nothing. I feel bad when I want to, like, my wife wants to watch a movie or something, and it's like, but I could be learning something. I could be doing something productive and beneficial. But I guess there's times where it's like, I just got to watch something. Let's sit down and watch a movie, or go to a movie or whatever, but not super duper often, because I want to be productive and help myself out, I guess, more.
Yeah, so, definitely.
Lots of things to pick from there.
That's great. That's really cool. Well, Trevor, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. It's been great to get to know you more, know more about your company, what you do, all that stuff. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this has been great. If you ever want to do it again down the road, let me know, because I'll make time for it. I think it's pretty fun to talk to other people. I love it when people come over to my shop, if they ever can. I mean, it's only people that are local or passing through ever have that opportunity, but having connections to talk to other people, especially that we've got a common interest and like to make things and like to talk about making things. I think this is awesome, and I love the podcast for that.
I appreciate it.
So yeah,
thank you so much. Mm-hmm. And thanks to all the Patreon members who make this show possible, and thanks everyone for listening. I'll be back next week.